Opening in theaters this week is the horror movie Imaginary. Here's my review. A lot of horror stories seek to explore that thing that goes bump in the night and the effect this has on the people scared of this creeping force. The notion of a toy being that object has a lot of potential to be scary, and while Imaginary has a few intriguing character moments early on, it has trouble building up on them and eventually just descends into silliness. One can see what director co-writer Jeff Wadlow is trying to do here, but as a horror movie it just underwhelms and mostly relies on all the usual tricks of the genre without doing more interesting things with them. There's promise early on when we're introduced to the central characters, primarily new stepmother Jessica. DeWanda Wise gives a solid performance here as a woman trying to connect with the two girls she's taking care of, and the patience required when trying to bond with them. The idea of her being a children's book writer and illustrator is a creative idea, and there's a lot that can be done with how her fears manifest in her drawings. The movie does give us the standard teenage girl with an attitude, but the concept of the younger sister getting attached to a teddy bear and her behavior being affected by this is an intriguing one. However, as the plot unravels more and more, that's when the movie tends to fall apart. A lot of the horror relies on jump scares, with characters turning a corner or something suddenly jumping out of the shadows. None of the attempts to get a fright from the audience work, and there's little tension in the moments when the teddy bear moves by itself or manipulates the little girl. Betty Buckley plays a next-door neighbor and is primarily direct attack cryptic and off-putting, but that character is one of the aspects of the film that becomes a little too silly. The various monsters that show up provide a little bit of creativity, but again, they don't offer much in the way of effective scares. The third act is when Imaginary especially starts to lose steam. It's a section that appears to go on for a while and seems never-ending. Most disappointing of all is that while the early character-based scenes presented some intriguing setup, the people we're watching stop becoming interesting after a while, even as Wise tries her best with the material she's handed. When even the creature feature elements struggle to excite, there's a problem. Imaginary mostly feels like squandered potential, especially making a horror movie that digs into grief and how nightmares can affect us when awake. There's a clear theme here about parental bonds and the difficulties of raising a new family, and Jessica's sympathetic early on as she deals with the problems thrown at her. DeWanda Wise also deserves credit for giving a performance that does grab attention, at least momentarily. It's when Imaginary showcases its horror movie elements that it becomes a disappointment, as Jeff Wadlow goes for easy shocks and scares, and the build-up towards them leads to underwhelming reveals. It's a promising idea that sadly winds up with not as much imagination as one hopes for.